Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of the Telegraph Rugby Podcast. I'm Ben Coles and I'm joined as always by Charlie Morgan. Hi Charlie.
Oh, too early there. Hi mate.
You are very enthusiastic this week. That's great to see. And I'm also joined by Charles Richardson. Hello Charles.
Hello everyone.
Tons to get into this week, gents. We're going to be hearing from our reporter Fiona Tomas in Auckland after a riveting Rugby World Cup final on Saturday morning, featuring arguably one of the greatest line-out steals in the game's history as New Zealand broke English hearts. Guys, what a final. It had everything.
Following on from two semis as well, how often do you see at least one of those three kind of top-tier knockout games just being a real stodge fest? And the final was brilliant. Two sides whose strengths were well publicised and actually came out in the final, and for it to be decided right at the death on New Zealand just about getting on top of that super strength of England's was fantastic.
It really was. And we're also going to look ahead to England's game against the All Blacks after they eased past a really poor Japan side, it has to be said, at Twickenham. And we're also going to hear about Charles's latest croissant-fueled trip to France and recap all the weekend's test action just on the game in Twickenham. Charlie and I were there. Like I said, Japan really not very good sort of defensively, and had moments with the ball where they looked great and then they looked terrible, didn't they? But England, positives, do we think?
Yeah, I think the Argentina game, the second watch of that was actually more encouraging than first. I think it was actually the other way around this week. I thought we were live saying this is curiously poor from Japan, but actually if you think that they were curiously poor and yet a couple of points at 17-6 and at 38-13, they could have imparted more pressure on England. So what would that have said? But they came through. They scored a half century of points. I think it was a step back for Smith-Farrell axis after kind of tentative steps forward. But I think these two games at the end of the autumn, we know Eddie Jones absolutely lives for these, and he will have bespoke plans in place, and it's just going to be riveting.
But a step forward for Farrell, would we say?
Yeah. I think he was. But he's been, honestly, watching him for Saracens this year, he's just looked really sharp. It's like almost 2 years in the interim. He's had those fitness setbacks. He's been kind of derailed a little bit by a couple of. He's had COVID twice, I think. He just looked sharp. He just looked really influential in everything he was doing. A couple of breakdown turnovers, one leading to Porter's first try, left-footed dink for Porter's second try. Yeah. When he's doing those sorts of things, he's really exuding a sort of conviction that England really, really need. And I think, I've written a piece inside Line this morning on how I think the answer is to get him back at 10 and get that balanced centre partnership outside him. I think that's the way to go.
As you'll know from previous weeks, we have a theme each episode, and we've looked at selection and the art of the attack. And this week we're going to be looking at officiating with a special guest, the Test Centurion and Rugby World Cup final referee Nigel Owens. It seems like a good time to be speaking to an experienced referee, given that a certain director of rugby with a fondness for video clips and sarcastic comments has been busy over the weekend. Yes, we're talking about Rassie Erasmus. Charles, he's one of your favourite people, isn't he?
Oh yeah, I love him. We go way back, me and Rassie. No, I mean, what he's doing to the game now is becoming very, very corrosive, and World Rugby need to do something about it. I think they banned him for 6 months last season. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's playing a very clever game, but only time will tell whether it's clever enough. I think he needs to be reprimanded again. And if you're banned for 6 months and don't learn your lesson, then well, maybe you need to be banned for longer.
Charles firmly off the fence, which we love to see. Charlie, do you have something on that?
Just utterly tiresome. I think they kind of made this point, I think, when we did a Twitter Spaces thing and when he trashed Nick Berry during the Lions tour. I think you're prioritising utterly kind of decimating an individual referee's reputation with the aim of highlighting kind of systematic flaws. There are just better ways to do it, and what is his mandate to do it? I clearly don't want to put words in his mouth here, but I feel like what his mandate to do it is the devotion that he's built up from South Africa fans for winning the World Cup and then the Lions series, to actually see for the first time little chinks in that, and some South African supporters going, hang on, let's just focus on our selection and our errors in what are really tight games because of the nature of how South Africa play. I think that speaks volumes.
Definitely seems to be a vibe there. I asked a few South African supporters on Twitter yesterday how they feel about it, and while they love what he's done, there does seem to be this move towards maybe the videos are not the way to be going about it. We'll get into that a bit later with Nigel, but let's start down in New Zealand and check in with Fiona, where after an unbeaten run stretching all the way back to 2017, England were defeated in a final which really had everything. Fiona, can you sum up the atmosphere at Eden Park on Saturday morning? Well, morning our time, evening your time. It looked incredible.
Yeah, do you know what? It was absolutely brilliant. Never, I think, in a lot of those players' lives, did they ever think that they'd run out in front of 42,500, a new record for a women's standalone test match. Eden Park was absolutely bouncing. The atmosphere was just incredible. And it's really exciting to think that, the RFU were targeting to fill out Twickenham in 3 years' time for the final when the World Cup comes to us. So, it was just absolutely phenomenal. And I think it will really go down as a real watershed moment for women's rugby, not just in New Zealand, but for the game in general. The
Lydia Thompson red card was such a key point in the game. I don't think there's a lot of debate about the card itself, but just that sort of moment, and what was your take on it and sort of how it affected the outcome of the game?
Simon Middleton, the England head coach, said it himself after the game. Lydia, and I've interviewed Lydia several times, she is the absolute nicest person you could ever meet. How do you stop Portia Woodman? That is the question. And unfortunately, in the heat of the moment, she just clattered into her. And I don't know if you guys have watched the replay, but Portia actually does the fencing response when she hits the floor. That's how bad the kind of knock was. So immediately she was kind of out of the contest, and she said that she can't remember any of the game. She can't remember her team winning a World Cup final, which is, just speaks to how kind of awful concussion can be, right? Whilst England didn't kind of go into panic mode straight away, I felt that when you're a player down, that's always at the back of your mind, isn't it? You're always going to be up against it, and unfortunately England were.
I thought one amazing moment from the final, and it's been kind of highlighted, I think Ali Donnelly tweeted about it, was Stacey Flula going off and just soaking up that atmosphere. And because the game was still in the balance, they just scored the try, I think, that ultimately decided it. But because the game was in the balance, it was almost as if she wasn't celebrating the victory yet. Clearly, she was just celebrating the occasion. That was lovely. I wanted to ask you, Fiona, we were setting this up to be a battle between a team that really comfortable in unstructured situations in New Zealand against a team that craves structure in England. Do we ask questions now of the England coaching staff as to why England weren't prepared, albeit to play against that phenomenal team in unstructured rugby with 14 players?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's going to be an inquest, isn't there, either way. We don't know whether Simon Middleton, the England head coach, will kind of stay on. His contract runs until the summer of next year. But he just cut an absolutely dejected figure yesterday. He came and fronted up to us in the team hotel, which was kind of good of him because he didn't need to. And I've never seen a man look so sad. Bless him. He was just crestfallen. It was like, it was as if someone had died. It was just so flat. And my heart went out to him because I know how much effort he and the whole coaching team have put into this. Like you said, they were nailed on favourites to win. They looked like they were coping with the pressure, frankly, during the heat of that battle. How do you adjust going a player down in a World Cup final? I think the signs were quite ominous when we had that injury news directly before the game about Leanne Infante being ruled out and Lucy Packer coming in. Lucy Packer, by the way, had an absolute phenomenal game, given the circumstances, her 9th cap. But there will be questions that will have to be asked. We're not here to cheerlead this side. They were supposed to win this thing and they haven't. So yeah, we'll wait to see how it all kind of plays out over the next few months. But Six Nations will be around the corner before you know it.
Fiona, obviously immense dejection and sadness on the English side, but I suppose just taking a step back and looking at it impartially and objectively, could that final have been any better in terms of increasing the exposure and the popularity around the women's game?
Do you know what? It was an absolute thrilling watch. It was so end-to-end, so topsy-turvy. It was frantic in passages of play. You could not, right up until the 77th minute when England had that line out, which is arguably the most crucial one that they've lost their entire World Cup campaign. You couldn't call it, right? You could not call who was going to win that World Cup final. And, that's what we want women's rugby to be about. And I think it was a brilliant advert for the game, a brilliant argument for investing in female athletes, investing in women's rugby. And I think a lot of people wanted the Red Roses to win to sort of validate the argument for investing in women's teams, and the RFU for all the faults that they might have. They have led the way in this area, and I think they will feel slightly aggrieved that it hasn't worked out for them on this occasion. But hopefully they'll stick to their guns and keep investing and keep supporting these women, because that's what they ultimately deserve. It's not the legacy that they want to leave, but they will be leaving some sort of legacy with that 30-game winning streak, albeit, like I said, not the one they wanted.
Huge TV audience as well. I think 1.7 million watched it on ITV, which is phenomenal. Fiona, just to wrap up, in terms of what's next for the team, for the coaching staff, I think Simon Middleton's going to stay. Which players are we not going to see again, and what's next for this team in terms of matches ahead in the Six Nations, things like that?
Yeah, so you look at the likes of Sarah Hunter, who's 37. I would be very surprised if she does stay on until 2020. Well, she's already said she won't stay on until 2025, but it's whether she kind of hangs up her boots now or whether she wants to target that Six Nations match in Newcastle next year. Obviously, Newcastle, that's her neck of the woods. It would be quite a nice way to bow out. But having lost a consecutive World Cup final now, I'm not sure she'll hang on. And it's only a 3-year turnaround until 2025. There aren't a lot of test matches that these women play, and each one is crucial in terms of embedding a new team in and getting one ready for the next World Cup. So questions as well, perhaps over Emily Scarrett, Marley Packer, even Lydia Thompson as well. They're all kind of sort of getting on a bit. But on the plus side, lots of young talent coming through. I think there are reasons still to be optimistic and cheerful. But like you said, there might be a kind of bumpy few months ahead.
Okay, next we're going to look back on England's win over Japan at Twickenham on Saturday. Charlie, we were both there. It was better than last week, and yet I'm also, every time I think about it, I've almost got a bit of an asterisk over it, just because Japan were really, really not very good. And so while England seemed to improve in certain areas, I don't really know how much to take from it. Is that fair?
That's fair. Let's set the scene. Really sunny day, about 16, 17 degrees. I packed my sunglasses after you called me out.
Remember them this week? Yeah.
I remember them this time. And thought it'd be a perfect day for Japan to spread the ball, really stress England laterally, as Argentina had done in the wet. And it just didn't happen. And you've got to give some credit to, England are an abrasive defensive unit, aren't they? I didn't think they came on strong in that regard. I think in the second half of the game. I didn't think that it was England imposing their defence on Japan that forced those errors. I think Japan would just look really kind of subdued throughout. Jamie Joseph wanted to kind of highlight afterwards. He wanted to highlight the pressure that England had put on, but I don't think that was a huge factor. And England were just slightly clunky and slightly tentative. Still, they spoke in the week about letting go and not being scared of making errors and making sure that they left everything out there. They to stress, they still scored 50 points, but Eddie Jones kind of estimate, he said it was a conservative estimate that we left 20 points out there. I think that's probably fair.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And I was just so disappointed in Japan, because I think I was so excited to see more of people like Dylan Riley at outside centre, who actually did play fairly well given the circumstances, but also Matsushima on the wing and Jimeno in the back row. I was really looking forward to seeing how they went, and they just did. I mean, the defence for that opening try, I don't know what Matsushima was doing cutting in that much, because it was a disaster.
He's gone massively off the boil, hasn't he, Matsushima? I mean, he looked a bit out of sorts when he was at Clermont in the top 14 for the past few seasons, and he didn't look the same Matsushima that we knew on Saturday, did he? Not at all. And I think Italy would have beaten them. I mean, and that's not, that used to be a sort of semi-insult, didn't it? But I mean, now I think, Japan obviously beat Ireland and Scotland in the last World Cup, and I think on Saturday, Italy would have comfortably beaten them, as they beat a great Australia team on Saturday.
Yeah, and I guess we had that Japan performance against the All Blacks in mind as well, didn't we? And we were expecting a bit more. In terms of England positives, though, because we shouldn't be overly negative about a 50-point win. Freddie Stewart, phenomenal again, just really good in the air. But I think he was good, and Ellis Genge was very good. I think we should, and Jack Van Poortvliet showed promise. I think Owen Farrell was maybe the one that could have sort of caught our eye a bit. What did you make of how Farrell played, Charlie?
Yeah, just kind of what we'd come to expect from him before that kind of odd spell post-World Cup with injuries and COVID, I think. And anybody who's watched any of how he's gone with Saracens this season, kind of conducting, as we keep kind of, I feel like I keep going on about how Saracens are attacking, but it is really refreshing what they're doing, and Farrell has been, along with Daly and Alex Goode, has been a really big part of that. He translated that quite nicely. I think maybe not enough has been said about how he's taken a step back to go to 12 to try and allow Smith to flourish into that 10 role, and although that makes the backline a bit unbalanced and doesn't give Smith the kind of tools that he's got, I think that will come good for Smith eventually, and he will potentially look back on this period as quite beneficial. Having said that, I think I would go back in the last two games of the autumn to a kind of more balanced midfield with Farrell at 10, and Smith could be a really, in the same mould that Damien McKenzie was looking for New Zealand as that really devastating, game-changing number 22. I think Smith can do a similar role, because he was sort of overreaching, it felt. There was right at the end of the game, if you watch it back, Smith is in a second wave, gets played in by Farrell on a pullback, and Tom Curry's got a walk in. But Smith lobs a pass over to Stewart, and it's really jarring because you don't see him make those sorts of decisions for Harlequins. I think he'll come good for sure, and I think it might just be a change of role coming up. Eddie Jones might persist because he really wants this midfield to work, as he's said time and again. But again, we find ourselves talking about the England midfield and how we're coming up to a pivotal kind of selection for it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I said on the first episode that I'd play Owen Farrell at 10, and I think I'd move him there for New Zealand and South Africa. I mean, Eddie Jones talks about how the game now has become a 23-man game, and he's got to, maybe put his money where his mouth is slightly now, and there isn't a better number 22 in world rugby than Marcus Smith, and him coming off the bench to change the game and to ignite pace, a bit like to inject pace, a bit like Jack Van Poortvliet did against Argentina. That would terrify opposition defences, and it might just let him settle in a little bit more. As you said, it looked like he was trying too hard, maybe and overplaying slightly, and that's maybe why he sort of missed that pass at the end.
Should add that maybe it's because we did analysis on it last week, watching sort of England's attacking shape with Farrell first and then Smith leaping around the back, that when Farrell in the opening minutes actually took a pass from Van Poortvliet and just sort of crashed up through the middle and made good meters. Both Charlie and I were sat in the stands going, "Oh, that's different," and that really caught our eye, didn't it? We were thinking, okay, maybe they've got a few more tricks up their sleeve.
You don't see that a lot from Farrell. I think it was kind of a way of, coaches talk about shaping the defence early on in games, don't they? And sometimes that can mean sort of kick passes to make sure that they're keeping those wings honest. And this seemed like a kind of ploy to keep Japan's midfield honest and going, Farrell's just not just going to pass all day. It turns out he sort of did after that one carry. Quite interesting.
It's the directness as well, though, that we spoke about after Argentina. Against Argentina, England look best when they're at the most direct. Yes, you have to be inventive within that and have skillful players. But we were too lateral. England were too lateral against Argentina, and at times overplayed. And then against Japan, it seemed as if there was more directness. You look at Genge's try when Sinclair's running that great out to in line off 9, and then you've got Genge following up. There was a lot more directness to it, and I thought that's when and as you've mentioned, the Farrell carry, and that's when England looked like they're at their best, because they've got very good ball carriers. They really do, and when they get them motoring, they're dangerous, and not many teams can handle them.
Definitely moments of promise, but I think, as Will Greenwood said in his column, I'm not getting out the bunting either, because I wasn't totally overawed by it. The All Blacks are coming to town. That is very exciting. But before we quickly talk about the All Blacks, can we just think about selection changes that we would make for the New Zealand game? Who do you want to sort of see come in from that side? My first thought is maybe that Guy Porter won't play at 13, and if we're benching Smith and we're benching Porter, essentially if you score 2 tries against Japan, you're not in the team the following week, by the sounds of things. What changes would you guys make to that team?
I think Slade's looked really hungry. Bit of a kind of misfire. It was a sort of summed up a bit of a misfiring afternoon before it happened. He led England out, and nobody sort of acknowledged that it was his 50th cap that he was getting from the bench. Do you remember? That was kind of a bit of an odd moment to start the whole thing off on Saturday, but he looked really hungry. In at 15, with Stewart moving to the right wing as they did against Australia a year ago, which with when Manu Tuilagi had the sneaky kind of false 14 on. I'd expect. Well, I say I'd expect. I've no idea, but I think we might see Tuilagi and Slade teaming up. just in midfield. Pack's really interesting as well. Clearly, he doesn't want Charles. You asked Eddie Jones, didn't you, in the live on team announcement day whether he'd considered teaming up Willis and Curry. That doesn't seem to be an option.
No, he was good on that.
Yeah, but we'll see. I think they've beaten that 2019 game, which they've referenced after the game against Japan. They beat England. Sorry, they beat New Zealand with 2 line-out jumpers in Laws and Itoje starting. I just wonder whether they change that back row up a little bit. We'll see. Yeah,
I mean, he seemed pretty damning about Jack Willis in that he will not pick him in the same back row as Tom Curry, and not damning about Jack Willis as a player, just that how he fits in at the minute.
Wants 3 line-out jumpers.
He wants 3 line-out jumpers. He wants 3 line-out jumpers. One of whom is at 6. And that's what he wants, and that's how he's going to pick his team. And unfortunately, Jack Willis seems to be the sort of collateral to that at the minute.
Maybe it's because I was watching the 2019 semi-final last week for some analysis, but Slade came on at fullback in that, I think, against New Zealand, and there were nice little touches there where I thought, I wonder if England might go back to that.
I think Jack Van Portfleet has to start at 9. I think we're all basically agreed on that.
Because we've said that, now he might not. Because that tends to be
what happens.
How these things work. So yeah, don't tell anybody. And what do we make of the All Blacks after their game against Scotland and how they sort of played so far this autumn? Are we I don't know.
Been off and on, haven't they? They look really imposing against Wales, far less so against Scotland, but they're sort of doing that with their selection as well. They're mixing it up one week and then seemingly going full noise. One week they'll clearly be full noise. This week coming. Having said that, they were they were staring down the barrel, weren't they? Really, at Murrayfield, and they managed to kind of pull that back.
What a missed opportunity for Scotland, though.
I know. Yeah, they will get. I'm sure they will in the future get better opportunities, but maybe not for a while, and they certainly haven't for a while. But they just couldn't hold on there. I think it was interesting that New Zealand kind of went back to what served them so well against Wales, which was just being that really, really, really direct. And TJ Paranara just sort of took that game by the scruff of his neck, as he has done so often.
It's just one of my favourite players.
Just such a charismatic leader, isn't he? And can be so influential for them.
His face at the final whistle was a picture.
Just relief.
So animated, like screaming. I remember towards the end in the closing stages, whenever a decision went the All Blacks' way, he was really giving it big licks.
Yeah, he'd be not. I mean, it's the officiating episode. He'd be top 3 nightmares to referee.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, he would be. He's such a good player. Last England win over New Zealand at Twickenham, of course, was
2012.
You said that nervously.
I thought it was a trick question for a second.
You're okay. No. I've just looked it up on the laptop. Yeah, it was 2012. It's been a long time. This time, England going to do it?
I think it'd be damaging if they didn't. I think that would be a 6th Test defeat of the year. It would mean that they could only get to a 50% win ratio, which is going to be difficult to attain anyway, obviously, because South Africa are after that. But I think Eddie Jones was talking a lot about how it's such a historic fixture and how. How it has been such a big deal for players to get over the line against New Zealand, and that's why kind of the 2019 win was so important. But this is a New Zealand team patently in transition, and England have got to be ruthless with that.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie seems to. The flip side is that England and Eddie Jones always seem to lift their game when they're playing New Zealand. You see, we recall 2019, but also there was that game in 2018 when England came very, very close to beating New Zealand, who were at the time excellent on the back of that Lions tour, the series draw in 2017. An excellent New Zealand team, and they came within it was an offside. Courtney Lawes charged down offside, where Sam Underhill went and scored. A whisker of beating them again at Twickenham. There's 2012 as well. I know Eddie wasn't involved then, but some of the players that are around now are, and they're aware of what it takes. And I think New Zealand at the minute are the better team, and that they have more cohesion in their starting 15, in their first choice 15. But that's only because they've been playing together for the whole of our summer. I think it's going to be really close. England will have to go up another level to win, but I think New Zealand just to nick it, a close one.
Yeah, I'm backing New Zealand as well. Unsure why, but I am. Our theme today is all about officiating in the game, and we'll be joined by arguably the finest official the game has ever seen in Nigel Owens. We're going to talk about the state of officiating in modern rugby, and I know, Charlie, you've had a question from readers about TMOs and sort of their role in the game.
Yeah, question from Twitter @DickieJev. Are some TMOs over officiating the game? Now, this is clearly a big talking point. I think the kind of what we've got to set out is what the aim is for these TMOs, and they want to be part of the team of 4. They want their involvements to be as seamless as possible, but they obviously want to keep the game flowing while getting as much correct as possible. They can come in for foul play and obviously for any kind of scoring instances where they're asked. They can also come in if they're asked to check something by the referee, and you'll have seen some of the kind of best refs and most experienced refs are doing that on the run, which is, you know, pretty handy. You want that if something's up for debate. I thought a really good example of best practice to kind of highlight was for the penalty try after Stuart Hogg's chip against New Zealand. Now, obviously there was a bounce and there was a big leg break, wasn't there, in the in goal area, and Anton Leonard-Brown tackled Stuart Hogg. Frank Murphy seemingly was pretty intent on giving the penalty try early on. Tom Foley, who was TMO, just said, can you just make sure, just maybe have a look at one more replay to make sure that leg break of a bounce isn't too far, that is out of the reach of Hogg, and therefore it isn't actually a probable try. I tweeted the definite try. The law is a probable try would have been scored without the offence. They came to the right answer because Frank Murphy said, yep, I think he probably would have been able to adjust to that bounce. And I think that's just a really good example. You don't want a referee who's involved in a really kind of a South Africa-France game, a game of that intensity, to be overrun by opinions coming in his ear, and because clearly at some of those breakdowns there are 4 or 5 offences going on. So we want to keep that flow, but you want to get the big moments right. But
then we had the flip side in France, South Africa. I know we're going to chat about that shortly, but then just to pick out that moment of the break towards the end of Sekou Makalu, who played on the wing, and he was chopped by Kurt Leorense, and he wasn't held. I'm quite convinced he wasn't held, but Wayne Barnes thought he was. He gave a penalty to South Africa. They kicked the 3 points, and it looked like they were going to go on to win. As I think it was Damien Villamsa who was lining up the kick. As he was lining up the kick, the whistles in the Stade Velodrome in Marseille were the loudest I've ever heard at any sports fixture ever. When they showed the replay of Makalu not being held on the big screen, and the French players went up to Barnes to protest as Villamsa was lining up this kick, and Barnes was sort of moving his arms side to side as if to say, no, go away. And the TMO didn't come in, by all accounts, as far as I'm aware. And I wondered at that point, if we are at the point where it is about getting the correct decision and for clear and obvious things. I think Barnes had an excellent game, but this was an error, and I wonder whether the TMO should have come in there. But at the same time, you don't want, as you suggested, the players coming up to you when the South African goal kicker's lining up a kick to try and protest the decision that he's just made 30 seconds before, because it's done and it's finished.
It's all a compromise, and it's really all an inexact science, isn't it?
No,
which is the difficulty when you're talking about highlighting these. And just to go back to Rassie Erasmus, I know we've had enough airtime on him, but South Africa are a team that play right on the edge because he wants that.
Yeah.
He wants them right in the grey areas, fighting at every breakdown, and that's just why I think it's slightly more. That gives it more of a hypocritical edge to it.
It was one of the great details about the Lions documentary, wasn't it? You kept seeing him sort of revving them up. We're going to go on to Erasmus more now with Nigel Owens, but we had some questions from readers and sort of some comments from readers as well, just asking about how he's going about these decisions, and I just wanted to read some of those out. We had one from Gareth Hughes asking whether Erasmus is a help or a hindrance, which I think is actually a really good point, given that, he will feel that he's trying to point out decisions which are incorrect, but actually the process just seems terribly wrong.
Hindrance.
Charles says hindrance. We've also had Sappers Abroad Rugby on Twitter saying, I'm a partisan of Rassie. He's done so well for us, and it's clear he is a massive presence in SA rugby. But at times, like many, he loses track of what's important. At first it was a laugh and giggle. Now the novelty is worn off. And one more from Rugbedia as well, which was, I don't agree with the way he's going about it, but he's obviously doing it because he's not getting the response he wants from the powers that be. I genuinely think he has the best interest of the game in his heart, and he wants to see better rugby for players and fans. Well, having said all that, let's hear what Nigel Owens has got to say about this, and also his views on officiating in the game. Nigel. Lots to get into, but I just wanted to start with asking you, what do you miss at the moment about kind of refereeing Test rugby?
Nothing at all. I'm just, and you know what? People are surprised when I say that, and I'm actually surprised myself, because I really was. When you sort of get to that sort of knowing, that the World Cup in 2019 would, probably be your last, because unless you're going to be about for the next cycle in 2023, and I didn't want to do that. And you're thinking it's going to come to an end. And I really was struggling a bit, I thought. But then, I put things in place. When I was 8 years of age, my dream was to be a farmer, bought a bit of land, small holding. First cattle arrived here when I got back from the World Cup in Japan. And then my focus just switched like that, to just loving being on the farm and just... And it's worked, that transition has worked. Now, I'm still involved in rugby quite heavily. I'm part of the USC selection process, and reviewing the games of the referees. I coached then a couple of referees here in Wales as my role with the WIU. So, I'm still involved in it, but I don't miss the refereeing. And certainly, I could quite easily go out there and referee the 80 minutes, but I just didn't like, in the end, the travelling, the referee camps, all the meetings and the talking about decisions and putting clips up. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why can't we just get out there and just referee the game? That's all we need to do. So no, I don't miss it one bit, to be honest with you.
Nigel, do you think that we have an over-reliance on the TMO at the minute? Do you think that he's sort of the way that it's been built up by World Rugby and the way that the relationship now exists with the protocols, do you think that their remit is too broad and that they have too much of an influence? Do you think it needs to be sort of stripped back a little bit?
Yeah, I argued against this when they came in years ago, because I thought it worked well how it was just for the goal line decisions, in the act of scoring a try. So if your foot touched the touchline as you were going over to score the try, you could check it. If you lost the ball, on the goal line or over, you could check it. And then they expanded it, and it was brought about by referees, really, afraid of getting things wrong and wanting technology to check things. So I was sort of not a big fan of it when they started extending the protocol, because what happens then is you will always doubt yourself. It's a little bit like, and I've used this phrase before quite a few times now. Imagine you're walking across the tallest building in London from one side to the other, and you're walking across that on a tightrope. If you haven't got a safety net underneath you, you're going to make damn sure that you are concentrating and you're focusing to get to the other side. Now, put a safety net underneath, you'll just walk across that quite blasé in the attitude, if I make a mistake and I fall, it doesn't matter, I'm safe. And that's what's happening now. Referees are going out in the field now and thinking, don't matter if we miss something, the TMO will come in and check it. No, that takes away your focus then. So I would strip it back. I would strip it back and let the referees get out there and referee the game. Because what the TMO should be doing is only coming in as a last resort when it was humanly impossible for the referee to see something. Now you're hearing referees going, was that forward? Oh, can you check that? Can you check this? TMO come in. And that's why it becomes far too technical. And to be fair to referees then, people are expecting every decision to be perfect. And you can't have a game like that. So for me, it takes away from the game. It adds... Look, when you have a TMO coming into the game for a big decision, yes, it brings in the excitement to the occasion. But, it's just like going to the circus. You go to the circus once a year, you enjoy it. Go to the circus every week, it's not the same. If you bring the TMO in, I'm not comparing the TMO to a circus, but if you bring the TMO in 6 or 7 times a game, people then are getting fed up. Except of having it once now and again, it adds to excitement. The more it's used, it takes away from the excitement. The game becomes a stop-start affair. The game lasts over 2 hours. So, yeah, for me, definitely, I think at the moment there's an over-reliance on it, and I certainly would strip it back quite a bit.
Don't worry, I feel like TMOs have been called worse over the years than a circus. Nigel, I've got to ask you about Rassie Erasmus and his sort of tweets about the France-South Africa game in the wake of that result. I think he's tweeted about 7 or 8 times so far, sort of putting up clips and trying to sarcastically highlight where he feels South Africa have been wronged. How do you feel about what he's doing? Is it helpful in any way? Is it a hindrance? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I saw these come up, and I was thinking, is this real Raz? Is this his genuine profile? Is he doing this? And yeah, to me, we don't need that in the game. And I'd have thought he'd have learned his lesson by now if it is him that is doing this. There's a procedure in place. If you're not happy with decisions or you have questions about decisions, like every coach will have, because the referees can't get everything right. There is a process to go through. You send your timeline in to the referee manager, which would be Joel Jute at World Rugby. And then they would look at that with the referee, and then you would reply to the coach and say, look, yeah, you're right here. This should have been penalised, or actually, no, the referee is correct here. Or, like a lot of things in rugby, it's, well, look, this is a grey one. If this is what the referee feels, interpretation of it, it could well have gone the other way. And that's the nature of the game. So, look, once I think you start putting things out there on social media, questioning decisions, to me, that's not what this game is about. I don't think, and I don't think it's right, and I don't like it. Go through the proper channels, and as long as everybody is open and honest and transparent, if the referee has refereed it well, so be it. If the referee hasn't refereed it well, and the feedback goes back to the coaches, look, yeah, we expect a better performance, expect better decisions. As long as everything is open and honest and transparent, that is the way forward. Not, I think, on social media.
Nigel, I think the defence of Erasmus, and he has got thousands and thousands of people defending him, is that it's attack on the system, and how the review process can be better and quicker and more streamlined. I certainly think that that's what his thinking was in the Nick Berry case during the Lions tour. How does the system change? Just to play devil's advocate here, because how can we make that better, and how does that process come about? Is that a review process of the system itself? Is it more experienced referees like you feeding your experience in?
Look, there is a point. I think the process can be improved, I think, because when I speak to a lot of coaches sometimes tell me, look, they're not happy with the process, they're not happy with sometimes the feedback, they're not happy with the answers they're having to some decisions. So there is obviously an issue here. And this is what, I do whistle watch every week for World Rugby. And what we try to do on that is to give an honest decision or give an honest explanation. And I certainly won't be giving an explanation if I was told, look, we need to get this message across, and I say, well, look, no, that's not the right message, then I wouldn't be doing it. So what we try to do is to explain to people, we saw last week there should have been a clear red card in the USA Kenya game. So we said there, look, this is non-negotiable. This should be a red card. So we expect referees to give this decision. There were other decisions like the Colby incident in the Ireland South Africa game, which resulted in a yellow card. And the referee felt it was a yellow card, and he wasn't wrong. Another referee may felt it was a red card, and he wouldn't have been wrong. It's just one of those decisions. So, if the process is not working, there needs to be then an honest review and discussion around how we can make a process work that everybody is happy with, and then if we can't arrive at that, then we have a problem. So across social media, I don't think is the right way to do it. And if there are issues with the process, then it needs to be sorted out by everybody concerned, and the sooner the better, I would say as well, because we don't want it to become a refereeing trial by social media of the rights and wrong of a decision or not.
Nigel, just if you were in the shoes of Wayne Barnes on Saturday night with everything that's come out from Rassie Erasmus, how would you be feeling now in today and yesterday? I'm sure Wayne probably hasn't seen it on social media, but he might have done, but he might pay it no attention. And I just wonder, on a sort of individual level, the sort of emotions that Wayne might be going through at the minute, especially on a night of great triumph for him, with beating your record of most tests refereed. And I just wondered how sort of if you could put yourself in his shoes, how you might be feeling.
Yeah, well, look, there's huge pressures on referees, and Wayne is a good friend of mine, a great friend, and a great referee as well. And you will be, you'll hear about this. You will see it. You can't avoid it these days, particularly if you're on social media yourself. So, but within you as a referee, there's something within you that allows you to. It doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't mean that it's nice, and it doesn't mean that you like it. But there's something in you that allows you to deal with this. Otherwise, you couldn't just do the job. And Wayne will go through that game. He'll do his own review of it with his performance reviewer, whoever that was at the time, and also as well with the referee manager as well, and his coach. And then there will be an honest review system and feedback as well. And I suppose if there's any questions that Razi has raised, they will be answered then through the proper channel, I would think, or certainly would like to think so. So yeah, there is, when you do hear these things, it does disappoint you as a referee, but you just can't let it affect you. When I was refereeing, you got the same. People were having a go at you in the public domain, sometimes privately, or send you an email privately or a text privately, and you just have to rise above that, And I was always honest. I would look at my game and say, look, yeah, the coach is right there, and I would have no issues with saying, yeah, got that wrong, or no, I'm sorry, that decision was correct, and if you need to change your mindset on it because this is the correct decision.
Is that something that could be improved, Nigel? You say that you'd be happy kind of coming out and explaining even those 50-50 calls, and I don't think there's any doubt in that. Do you think that the clearly rigorous review process that referees go through, can that be more transparent, and would that therefore help?
Well, it's a very difficult balance you see. This is or otherwise it just becomes a review in the public domain, and nobody who goes to work would have your review process put out in the public domain. You have to remember as well, and Wayne is one of the best at these, when the referee makes a decision on the field, he'll explain exactly why he's making that decision. So everybody watching that game will know, whether you agree with it or not, why the decision is made. There'll be an explanation there for that decision. Now, this is what we try to do on Whistle Watch, is that we try to explain these, so what we'll probably be doing when we're recording this now on early Wednesday morning, what we'll be doing is probably discussing a lot of these questions that people are asking on social media. So where people are split between decisions or asking the questions about certain decisions, we will answer these to them. So that's what we try to do. And that's not sort of saying, well, yeah, the referee was wrong. It's just being honest and giving an explanation. Well, look, this is what the referee saw. This is why he gave this decision. But this is what the decision should be, or this could be the better decision, not meaning that the referee is wrong. So that's what we try to do. So it's a very difficult one, really, to sort of come out and explain after every game a decision that a coach or people may not agree with. So I like to think that Whistle Watch is doing a bit of that without going into the sort of actual review process of seeing a referee's review, or putting things out there of, yes, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was right, this was right. So it's a very difficult balance to get, I think. And that's, we need to trust the process, There needs to be a process in place that everybody can trust the process and be happy with it. And hopefully then we won't have these things going on social media about decisions.
Just quickly on that, Nigel, have you got an example or a story of when you might have spoken to a coach after a game and either, I don't know, apologised or brought him round to your way of thinking about a decision that you made?
Every game there was a conversation with the coach after the game. And look, there's a heat of the moment after the game, isn't there? And that is not the time sometimes to have that conversation. Sometimes you do have it. And there'd be a couple of times, with Steve Hansen in particular would be knocking the door. He said, hey, what about that decision? That wasn't right. I said, yes, it was. Why was it right? And I would tell him, well, I don't think so. Well, I said, it's one of these decisions that can go either way. And he'd always shrug his shoulders and go off. You got an answer for everything you have, and off he'd go and shaking his head, But it was done in a respectful way. You were challenged by these coaches. And I love those conversations with the coaches afterwards. Whether they'd agree with me, whether they'd be berating me on against a decision, I always say, well, sometimes I'll just say, yeah, look, sorry, I got that wrong. And that's not the right decision. And then they'd be sitting there going, oh, right, okay. The issue comes if you're making the same mistake again, and coaches will make errors picking a team, picking a squad. They'll make error on tactics. A player will make an error in the game. The referee will make an error in the game. We're all human. And sometimes we just need a little bit of common sense, I think, and a little bit of value of respect in those conversations when they happen.
Back to the farm, Nigel. Is it easier to marshal around livestock or front row forward?
Oh, much easier. You know, when I tell the livestock one thing, they listen. Telling the front row forward 6 times, and they still don't listen.
That sounds about right. Nigel, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, boys. All the best.
Okay, let's wrap up by looking at the rest of the weekend's games. Many tests played across Europe. And let's start, Charles, with your game down in Marseille, France against South Africa. We're not going to talk about Razzie again. Let's talk about the 2 red cards, though, because they were interesting. Yeah,
what an occasion too. The 2 red cards, both stonewall decisions for me. Pretty routine for Wayne Barnes. As I wrote in my report, I don't think in his previous 100 tests he'll have had much easier decisions or certainly high-profile decisions to make. But you could tell at the end the relief on the sort of official's face. I don't think they'd have had harder test matches to referee than that. The intensity, the emotion, the nervousness around the stadium, it was off the chain, completely off the charts.
That's 2 tight losses now for South Africa without an elite fly half, you could argue, or goal kicker. So what do we make of them? I mean, if you're actually losing to Ireland and France by small margins and you haven't got a quality 10, it's not terrible.
The small margins is the key, isn't it? I just said earlier that those 2, for South Africa to deliver that intensity, their games still look like World Cup semi-finals, don't they? And you can't say that of all the nations. You certainly can't say that of England at the minute.
No.
They'll maintain that momentum, that intensity at the World Cup for sure, and they will definitely be contenders at that World Cup. The small margins is the key, because I think France with them were a couple of big moments away from thinking that they've had a super disappointing autumn, because underwhelming against Australia, got through Damien Panot's phenomenal solo try. South Africa, they weather a storm and get through in what was kind of wild, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, at one point, just after Pieter-Steph du Toit had been red carded and France scored their try, it was Cyril Baille who went over. It was 13-0 to France. South Africa down to 14 men. The Springboks looked completely shell-shocked. I turned to some colleagues in the press box and I thought it could be a massacre. I thought we could be looking at a 30-40-0 job here, because South Africa, their body language was of complete dejection. They looked all crestfallen. They were down to 14 men in this French bear pit with France running riot, really, ball in hand. Their first try was out of this world good. Just the most fluid backs play, and then the bludgeon of the forwards. It was a wonder to watch. And to their credit, South Africa, they showed enormous character and were so valiant. I mean, they led with 4 points. They led by 4 points with 5 to 10 minutes to go, and then they got pipped to the post. I know things were evened up in the second half by Antoine Dupont's red. But even so, they showed tremendous character, and they were. I thought they were far better than against Australia. Really, I know that intensity is their trump card. They've got this really meaty game plan, which is very direct. But it was underpinned on Saturday actually by a really high sort of level of skill. I thought that a lot of their players are okay. They play very directly, but after the first 10 minutes, after they were sort of, I don't know, they looked very nervy in the opening 10 minutes. After that, they really settled, and I think they got into their groove a little bit, and we saw actually why they're world champions, I thought.
Just quickly, Charles, you've written a piece on hybrid players today.
Yes.
Why is that? What inspired you to write that?
Well, that is because with Pieter-Steph du Toit's red card at the beginning of the game on Saturday night, Jonathan Danty, the fantastic cannonball French centre, had to leave because he failed his HIA and I believe broke his cheekbone too. And instead of bringing on Mathieu Jalibert to fly half and sliding Romain Ntamak to 12, Fabien Galtier decided to bring on the Stade Francais flanker, Sekou Makalu, onto the wing. Now, it's an experiment he tried in Japan. But then here we were against the world champions in this sort of crucial autumn international in front of a sold-out crowd in Marseille, and he was bringing a flanker onto the wing to face none other than Cheslin Colby. It was a massive gamble, humongous, and it was a gamble that paid off. Makalu, he took his. He didn't look too pretty when he was taking his high balls, I must say, but he took them nonetheless. He was phenomenally dangerous ball in hand and caused South Africa some real problems and kept Colby at bay, which, I mean, there are a lot of first-choice wingers in international rugby who would have struggled to do all that.
I wanted to quickly touch on Scotland against New Zealand. To pull back the curtain a little bit, everybody, when the game was going on, we were suddenly thinking, oh no, we're going to have to, we were thinking we're going to have to top the running order with Scotland and New Zealand because Scotland are going to beat New Zealand and this is really impressive. And then it was a bit familiar, wasn't it, Charlie? I mean, that was a real shame for the Scots.
Yep, just fell away, having done so much really well. But I mean, credit to New Zealand. They, as we say, it felt like a similar kind of selection to their selection against Japan, and that didn't go very well either. What they're trying to do is under a new. It's kind of interesting them blooding. Previously, when they've blooded new players, they've come into this amazingly well-functioning machine, and at the minute they're coming into a side, albeit now with 6 successive wins, they're coming into a side with a revamped coaching team, with a revamped approach, coming a lot more direct. So there are a lot more moving parts for these new players, and it felt like that, and it felt like Scotland did enough to overcome that and actually put them away. And just the familiar failings of that inefficiency in the opposition 22. That Scott Barrett last gasp tackle on Stuart Hogg was amazing. He's a huge player for them, Scott Barrett. And yeah, it's one of those that all. I mean, apparently Gregor Townsend very much didn't sort of accept that. Fantastic, thanks. Yeah, brave performance, and the performance was pretty good despite the result. I think he was gutted because I think he thought that it was a huge opportunity as it was.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's exactly definitely what you want to hear, isn't it? If you're a Scotland follower.
Losing Hamish Watson early to injury was a massive blow, I thought, as well. Mm. In fact, when he went off, I thought they could be in trouble here and really up against it. I mean, I know they've got good depth and certainly better depth than they might have had historically, but I think that twin axis of Ritchie and Watson is a really sort of canny partnership on the back row for Scotland, especially with Matt Fakeson, who's improving excellently as well at number 8.
That Ireland Scotland World Cup group game.
Yeah, I saw a few Irish people tweeting going, it's going to be spicy. Let's jump to Cardiff. A much needed win, I think, for Wayne Pivac and Wales over Argentina. A bit disappointed that Argentina didn't back up how they played at Twickenham, but maybe it was just too much of an ask to produce that another week on. Important for Pivac, like we said, just to ease a bit of pressure. They have a bit of an odd schedule because they have Georgia next week, or this week rather, followed by Australia. Could conceivably win both of those and then have won 3 out of 4 this autumn, and suddenly his record doesn't, or the pressure on him doesn't seem as bad as it was, does it?
You would like more of their progress to kind of be built on kind of what is going right from a tactical side of view, what is going right with kind of selections coming in. I think you're going to bank on Wales' reaction to a poor performance in Cardiff. That's absolutely fine. Whether that is continuing to develop the side, I'm not sure. George North going well at 13 is. Jack Morgan really good again. So that's encouraging. We'll see. Those two games finished in the autumn need to be convincing performances, don't they?
Yeah, let's touch on Ireland-Fiji as well. I think apparently Andy Farrell labelled it an awful performance, but they changed so much of their side, didn't they? And I think Nick Tominey was the only standout as well. So maybe just a good sort of way for Farrell to test out his depth and just see what he's got available, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been the issue, hasn't it, with Ireland? In fact, for many of the home nations, that's always been the issue, and it's an issue you could lay at the floor of at the door of Australia as well. The starting 15 is excellent, but then once a few of those guys fall away, they struggle. But I mean, I think Ireland are building good depth, and we'll certainly see on Saturday. I'm going over to Dublin on Saturday. Very much looking forward to seeing a full strength Irish side, or maybe he might make a sort of hybrid squad to bring them on a little bit more, bring that development on a little bit more, or he might go hell for leather and say no, starting 15, let's go and wallop the Wallabies.
And listen, if it feels like we've gone through those games pretty quickly, it's because we want to devote a bit of time to talking about Italy's win over Australia, which was amazing to see. Just fantasc with the old Angie Capuazzo at fullback, causing chaos again, and Italy getting a really famous win. That was brilliant to see, wasn't it?
He's getting the World Rugby Breakthrough Player of the Year, isn't he?
Let's hope so.
Well, you might get a bit of Irish opposition to that, saying give it to Dan Sheehan, but he's certainly been fun, hasn't he?
Sheehan and Hansen have been integral to that amazing Ireland year, absolutely. But he's just so fun, so well balanced, and the back movement for his first try drew gasps. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, amazing. And Yeah, just heroes littered all over the field, really, for Italy. And you've got one of our favourites, Danilo Fischetti at loosehead, who's just continues to amaze.
Have we adopted him as a pod favourite player?
I think
we present him with an award or some sort of cap or something?
I mean, before this weekend, a little known fact: he had the longest average pass in the whole of the Autumn Nations series of anybody of the first weekend, which is just a remarkable statistic for a loosehead prop to have. But yeah, I thought the centre partnership were cracking as well. Brex and Marisi in the centres were excellent. They've got a really lively back three now, Italy, and Tommy Allen running the show at 10 with who is second choice really behind Paolo Garbisi. So they've got some real depth at fly half as well. It's not a disastrous result for Australia. I know how it might look on paper, but they made a lot of changes, that Australian 15. And as I said, I think I have no worries for the World Cup next year in terms of the Australian first choice 15. But Italy are a much improved beast. They showed that against Wales, and they showed it on Saturday, and good for them. And it's fantastic for global rugby, really.
South Africa next, can they?
Can they?
No.
Fingers crossed.
No.
But maybe. Sorry.
No, well, I suppose it depends what team South Africa go with, I suppose. But they won't be taking them lightly now.
I'm really pleased for Kieran Crowley. I think he's just a really good head coach. He's sort of got them believing this side, and he's always very good to speak to whenever we get the chance. There are just a few rumblings in Australia, though, about Dave Rennie after this and what this means, and that his record isn't great. What do you think the situation is there?
I was going to say, go on for the tangent, a really good interview on Sydney Morning Herald by Tom Decent with Ben Donaldson, the debutant that missed that conversion, which is a heartbreaking way to start your Test career. On Rennie, they should have been in England in the series in July, shouldn't they? Having kind of cast aside England with 14 men in the first test, they had so many chances to win the second and then the third. That was a gut wrencher. Should have beaten the All Blacks, but for Mathieu Raynal's intervention. So
correct
just
intervention.
A really funny kind of bitty year. You sense that when they get all the best players on the park, that they will be a force to be reckoned with. But it's just how results like that must just derail momentum, derail confidence. I guess we'll see how they respond.
Should add Rennie's contract is up after the World Cup next year, so I think that's why there's a few there's sort of columns starting to be devoted towards this and whether he'll continue. Right, that's it for today. Thanks to Charles and Charlie as ever, and to our guests Fiona Tomas and Nigel Owens. A reminder, we'll be exploring a different theme each week, and if you haven't already, you can check out earlier episodes with Eddie Jones on the art of selection, and last week's chat with former England head coach Stuart Lancaster on attack in the modern game as well. Our theme next week is all about the set piece, so if you have any questions ahead of that one, you can get in touch with us at rugbypod@telegraph.co.uk or send us a tweet as well. In the meantime, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, you can do that now on any platform, wherever you are in the world. The three of us will be back with you next week. Until then, goodbye.